everyone, welcome back to my channel, and say hello to Bonbon here. Hi Bonbon, say hi to people on YouTube. Bonbon and I wanted to tell you about 5 biographies or autobiographies that I'd like to recommend, because even though I mostly cover fiction on this channel, I do read a good enough amount of nonfiction, and through the years I've amassed some favorites, so to say. So let's start with the first one. The first one is called Romantic Outlaws: The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Her Daughter Mary Shelley by Charlotte Gordon. Now, this is an extraordinary dual biography about 2 writers who had quite different approaches and almost opposite mentalities, and they also never met, even though they were mother and daughter. They both are considered to be feminist icons as well. And Mary Shelley, of course, on her end, doesn't really need an introduction. We all know how Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus is important and good. It's not just influential, it's honestly a well-written story. So on this occasion, I just like to mention a lesser known work of hers called The Last Man. And it's actually a proto-dystopian tale. One of the earliest examples of a dystopian novel in which the early 21st century Europe is experiencing a deadly virus outbreak, and they're trying to deal with it. And it's also a novel which has some of the, amusingly enough, biographical inserts from Mary Shelley, where she inserts her late husband at the time, Percy Shelley, who of course famously died at the sea. And this all resulted in a very interesting, very, I would say, more important than good novel about a virus, because it was absolutely trashed by the critics and the audience at the time. And it wasn't at least at I think late 60s when it was rediscovered and reappraised. And having skimmed through it, I wouldn't say it's very engaging, but it is absolutely important if you want to understand how dystopia itself as a concept is nothing new. It's just the way people collectively, or writers, wrestled with the anxieties of the oncoming age. And Mary Wollstonecraft, who is of course the second subject of this biography, was one of the earliest feminists of her age and recognized at the time. And she was also a poet and a philosopher in her own right. She wrote the seminal A Vindication of the Rights of a Woman, which is still cited to this day. And if anything, I think she is underread today. So the strength of this book is honestly something that goes against conventional wisdom when it comes to biographies. Usually you don't examine 2 people in a biography. It's too much. You take one life, and even then it might be too eventful. You might just cover someone's childhood or quote-unquote active years. But here it actually makes sense, because the author, Charlotte Gordon, discovered something eerie about the lives of both mother and daughter here, which is to say that Mary Shelley and Mary Wollstonecraft, the trajectories of their lives were quite similar, strikingly similar. The events in their lives happened at almost the same time, even though they never met. They lived decades apart, but yeah, there's that. The second book that I would like to cover today is called Education of a Wandering Man by Louis L'Amour. Now, I'm a diehard fan of westerns and frontier stories and man versus nature tales. And despite all that, when it comes to like pure westerns in literary form, I read very little of them. My westerns, like for the most people, were consumed through the world of cinema. And lately I've been trying to change that. And to achieve that goal, if that is a goal, I've turned to the late and great Louis L'Amour for help. He was probably the most prolific and celebrated writer of westerns, next to maybe only Larry McMurtry might rival him in terms of importance, which is another writer that I want to check out more deeply. And L'Amour wrote, I think, 86 novels and a bunch of short stories. In his long and storied career, he was widely recognized. I think he was even awarded by a presidential medal at the time. And having read some of his work, what strikes me the most is his ability to convey open spaces. The sheer physicality and vividness of them just seeps through the page. And having read his biography, I know now why is that so. Because every river, every canyon, every mountain, and so forth is described so incredibly because he was an avid traveler, because he visited all of those places. At the age of 15, he left home, he traveled all over the world. He became a merchant seaman. He served with the United States Army in World War II. He visited every single continent except for Antarctica. And the best part about this book, which was published posthumously, is that it's short. It's short the way his novels are. It's to the point, it's briskly paced, so if you decide to read any book on this list, I would recommend this one, honestly. The next book on this list I would like to recommend is called American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin. Now, I'll be completely honest, this is the book that gave me an idea to go back and compile this list. I read this book fairly recently and it immediately became one of my favorites. This is a colossal work that took 25 years to research, collect, write, and I think in 2005 when it was published, it won a Pulitzer, and rightly so. Now, in terms of the subject matter or the person that's being examined here, I knew very little about Robert Oppenheimer apart from his involvement with Project Manhattan. And I'm glad that I dived deep into this absolutely stunning work that examines his personal life, his relationships, the fallout that happened in his life because he became an activist of anti-bomb, anti-war, his absolute train wreck of personal life and relationships, of course the invention of the bomb itself, the way he was shunned and ostracized by the scientific community, and the way it was orchestrated by government at the time, all of that. Coincidentally, Christopher Nolan is making a movie that's based partially on this book, and it will cover his life, and I think Cillian Murphy is going to portray him, so I am looking very much forward to it. The next book that I wanted to recommend is called The Lost City of Z, A Tale of Deadly Obsession in the Amazon by David Gran. This is probably cheating because it reads more like a novel than a traditional biography, but nevertheless, it was actually based on a series of diaries that were found by the author and compiled into this book. And the diaries belonged to British explorer Percy Fawcett, and they detail his quest for Lost City of Z or El Dorado. And what makes it so stunning is the display of sheer will and obsession and commitment by an individual who is single-minded to the point of being mad. There's no other word for it. And if you've seen the movie before with Patterson, I think you should still read this book. Even though the movie is excellent by all means, it's really good, but still, read the book. The last book on this list that I want to recommend is called No Longer Human, and it was written by Osamu Dazai. And this is another book on this list that you could make a case for skirting the definition of a biography, but by all accounts, Dazai put so much of his life and psyche and experiences in it, it's impossible not to see it as at least a partial autobiography. It's also one of the heaviest existential novels I've ever read, so please be warned, this is not a light read. The main character is a young Japanese man, and he is caught between a slow collapse of traditional Japanese values and ideas on one side, and on the other, this oncoming march of imminent westernization of Japan as a nation. And as a result, the protagonist feels incredibly alienated and othered and unseen. And what makes this work stand apart is how not melodramatic it is. It's almost like a Japanese version of The Stranger by Albert Camus. Not to say that I'm saying that one cannot exist apart from the other. It absolutely can. It just, when it comes to works such as these, it's very easy for them to fall into the trap of being melodramatic. And this is not melodramatic. It's incredibly raw, authentic, for lack of a better word, true. It's, funnily enough, also an anime. I first encountered Dazai's work in the form of an anime adaptation called Aoi Bungaku. And I'm someone who is an occasional anime watcher. And I say occasional because I cannot deal with the so-called anime bullshit with fan service and ridiculous premises and just exaggerated stuff. And this series, this anthology called Aoi Bangaku, actually every episode covers an important work of Japanese literature. So I do recommend it because it's quite tasteful the way they did it. So yeah, that's it from me. From Banban, who is eating his carrot over there, from Tara, who is resting in my lap. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters for supporting me. If you like my work, please do like and subscribe and all that good stuff. I'll be linking my music channel if you're interested in that in the description as well. And have a good one. Please do write if you've read any of these or if you have any recommendations of your own. And bye-bye.